First Things, episode number 26.
I seem to be lost.
And so you're working around the clock so you don't take time for yourself to feel like an actual human being.
I used to feel like no matter how hard I worked, I was just spinning my wheels.
Try to be perfect and try to have everything in place at one point in time, and you can't.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to First Things, the podcast dedicated to practical productivity based on modern research. My name is Brandon Vaughn, and it's my goal to help you apply productive solutions to your life to help you live with less stress, greater passion, and amazing results. Today, we are on Chapter 9 of Neil Fiore's book, The Now Habit, and Chapter 9 deals with fine-tuning your progress. We've been doing an 8-9 week study on the topic of procrastination, and many of you have told me how this has really helped you out a bit, and I'm so thankful for that because it has helped me out going through this material yet again. I go through the material by Neil at least once every few years because I always seem to forget certain things or I want to firm up certain types of things as I'm going through this. And it's just been such a great study for me. And I've been very encouraged by how it's been helping many of you overcome some of your procrastination habits as well. Now, I am working out the details to do an interview with Neil, and I think that will happen. I don't want to say it's 100% yet until I've actually recorded it, but Neil has expressed interest in it. I've been talking to him about when we can do that, which hopefully will be within the next week or two, and I hope to play that interview the week after we finish, and so next week will be the last chapter that we cover in the book, and I hope to then follow that up with an interview with Neil, and I'm very excited about that, to be able to talk to the very author of the book that has been giving us such tremendous ideas on how to overcome procrastination. I've also mentioned to you Timothy Moser, I've several times mentioned him as being a great fan and supporter of the show, and Timothy has his own podcast that's doing really great that deals with productivity issues as well, and Timothy takes a much different slant than I do. He's very practical in talking about how to apply a lot of things, where I tend to focus a lot on these first things, these kind of psychological areas of our mindsets and paradigms. And so we complement each other, I think, really well. And Timothy's asked me to be on his show. So hopefully within the next week or two, I will interview with him, and I'll let you know about that so you can check out his show and check out his interview of me on his show. And I also hope to do the same otherwise. I hope to turn that around and also interview Timothy as well and to have him on our show in a couple of weeks. Now, if you've enjoyed this really detailed look into a particular topic, we are going to do this again. So after we do these interviews, and so I may have an interview with Neil, and then we may have an interview with Timothy Moser, I'm going to go into another topical study, and that is going to be on assertiveness, because many of you have listened to my episode on Just Say No. It is my most popular episode that I have, and I really feel like we should dig into that a little bit more. Not only because I think it would help many of you, since it seems to be a very hot topic from all the ones that I've dealt with in the past, but it also helps me, and I think it will help some new listeners as well who maybe haven't even heard that episode yet. So I will tell you a little bit more about that in the coming weeks, tell you about some of the things that you might want to get to actually do some extra studying on that particular material. So we have covered most of the main topics needed to overcome procrastination in your life. We spent 8 and 9 weeks talking about various techniques that really can make a difference for you. And if you are like me, at least one or two of those techniques that we have discussed are really your missing keys to overcome procrastination. Perhaps it's the reverse calendar, or the unschedule, or the guilt-free play, which quite honestly I think is the secret for all of us, if I'm really honest. Or maybe it's getting started without fear of having a perfect start, or the fact that you always have a choice, and so on. I don't want to repeat everything of what we talked about, and I actually gave a review of all the major techniques in our last episode. And again, this has been very helpful for me. I've actually used these techniques in the past to get various college degrees. I did this to get my doctorate and get me through a very stressful time of my life. But there's one area that I've mentioned for now 4 or 5 weeks in a row, and that is my aspirations to do music. I've always been a musician, always loved music, and for some odd reason, I have procrastinated in the area of making my own music. And I've been wanting to write music all my life. In the last 20 years, I probably wrote only 5 complete songs. Now, I've written lots of pieces of songs, but never anything complete all the way through. And at the beginning of January, I set this goal, I mentioned to you, of writing 14 songs by the end of January. And I've been using the very techniques that we've been talking about on this show to overcome a very stubborn procrastination area for me. Now, I went over January by a few days, but I ended up writing 14 out of 14 songs. So I accomplished my goal. And if you think about this, I wrote about 5 complete songs in 20 years, and I wrote nearly 3 times that in just about 30 days, a little over 30 days, applying these very techniques, these unscheduled, these reverse calendars, this guilt-free play, this starting, this choosing to start. And what's even more interesting is that I found that creativity has children because I not only ended up with 14 songs, I ended up with ideas for another 8 songs. So in total, I came up with ideas for 22 songs within a matter of about 30 days. And I plan on finishing those 8 songs in this next week and then have to consider exactly how I want to proceed. Maybe pick the best 15 for an album, maybe release 5 for an EP just to kind of get my feet wet and figure out how to do things like licensing and copywriting of music and how to put it out there on iTunes and Amazon and all this stuff. And then maybe 6 or 8 months later, then release the rest of them for a full album once I actually know what I'm doing. And that's a good problem. I mean, it's a great problem to have. And as I've seen yet again, these principles that we've been talking about have really worked in my own life. I'm sitting here amazed that I've spent 2 decades basically stuck and sitting on the side of the road, not moving forward, and applying these very principles has tripled my productivity output and decreased the time from 20 years down to about 30 days. Now, my friends, I hope that you are pushing yourself into these techniques and seeing that they really work. And I want to encourage you, if you've only been listening to me talk about this, if you've been procrastinating about dealing with your procrastination, then stop and do it. Get in there, get into your life, and embrace it like an adventure. Push yourself to try out some of these techniques. Now, sometimes accountability really helps. One of the reasons why I've been telling you guys about my songs is not to brag about it, and it's not because I'm hoping one day you'll buy my songs, although I probably will play a few of these songs as I start to demo them at the end of my show, in case you want to stick around and listen to them. I'm not going to force you to listen to them before you hear the main topics that we're talking about, but I may do that. But my goal isn't that, oh, here's this audience and maybe they'll buy my music. The reason why I'm telling you all this stuff is because it makes me feel accountable, because I'm telling you guys, hey, listen, I'm applying these techniques and I think they work, and I want to see them work in this area, and here's my goal, and I'm telling you this is what I'm doing, and then next week I know that I'm going to have to talk to you guys and tell you how I'm doing. And there's a slight motivation there. It isn't my primary motivation, maybe even my second or third motivation factors, but it definitely is there. I think there's something to accountability. So if you're dealing with procrastination in general or procrastination in certain areas, why not get onto Facebook or Twitter and tell people about it? Hey, guess what? I've been listening to this podcast on procrastination. I've decided it's time for me to do something about blank. What is that? And then tell people about that. Or if you don't want to do that on Facebook, then go onto my blog site and tell me about it. Tell other people who read my blog site about it. Say, hey, I'm going to do this in the next 6 weeks, and I want to tell people about this, and I'm going to come back next week and write about my progress. That would help you out tremendously, and something that you definitely should consider doing. Now, in chapter 9 of the book, Fine-Tuning Your Progress, we've been talking about all these different techniques and starting to develop these new now habits, embracing the now moment. But I don't want you to be mistaken that you will never have any setbacks. That it doesn't mean that you won't face setbacks. Any new system requires tweaking. It requires personalization. What works for me might not be an exact fit for you. It might be close, but it might not be exact. In fact, I think a lot of the techniques that Neil talks about are things that will work for everyone who tries them, but the exact nature in which you should do them. Like, how do you do your unschedule? Do you write this in a computer? Do you put it on your phone? Do you put it on a piece of paper or a planner, or do you attempt to try to do it in your head, which I don't think works for most people? But how you do this is really up to you. And it's what really works for you, what fits like a glove, what is natural for you. And if writing things down on a piece of paper is natural to you, then don't even waste time trying to put them in a computer. Do something that you will stick with and that you like doing, that is very natural to you. So the actual ways in which you will do these techniques will vary from person to person, but the overall technique, I think, is something that really does work. But regardless of that, you need to expect that you will occasionally fail at this. You will have setbacks. And if you've really suffered from procrastination most of your life, you may have constant failures initially. And you shouldn't be surprised and you shouldn't be upset with yourself over this. To think that you'll be perfect is the very trap that we're trying to avoid in all these areas in our life anyway. This perfectionism is what causes procrastination many times. So don't try to become a perfectionist to overcome procrastination. Do you see the dilemma there? That if perfectionism causes procrastination, then you don't want to approach overcoming procrastination with perfectionism. So don't get upset if you're not perfect at this. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some effort. It's going to take some failures and learning from those failures and moving on with your life. Now, I recently caught up with Brendon Burchard, the author of The Charge, which is a national bestseller, motivational type of speaker, and asked about limiting beliefs. Because a lot of what we're talking about here in the last few weeks is limiting beliefs. And listen to what he had to say about this.
If we're going to make you feel more alive and more strong and more powerful and more capable of changing, here's what we have to change. Not your limiting beliefs. We have to change your entire focus of what you're looking at. And there's this concept we call RWID. I think this is the most important concept really in the field of psychology and, frankly, personal achievement, is the relative weight of importance and duration that you're giving to any given thought anyway. Relative weight of importance and duration. Let me give you an example of what that is. This coaching client, she's constantly focusing on her limiting beliefs. Oh, well, I just have this insecurity that, I'm not good enough. And my limiting belief is I'm always, I just don't think I'm good enough. And I'm always thinking I'm not good enough. Yeah, exactly. You're always thinking you're not good enough. So her relative weight of importance and duration of her thoughts, when it's balanced between I'm not good enough versus I'm capable and strong and competent, it's always over here. She's giving this thought more weight. The truth is, in your mind, at any given moment, you're having two thoughts. It's almost a duality of what we think about ourselves. If you're thinking about your insecurities, there's also a part of you that's aware that that's an insecurity, so you're competent and capable of understanding your strengths as well. Does that make sense? So if you know if you have this insecurity, there's a part of you that's saying, yeah, maybe I feel like a mouse, but there's a part of you inside that makes you feel like a lion too. The problem is all of your weight of your focus of your mind has been going to those limiting things versus those expanding or powerful things. The weight of your attention is focused on your weaknesses, your problems, your limits. And the importance you're giving that thought is more important than you're giving to the ideas of your own strengths. And the duration is dictating your destiny. The duration of how long do I focus and give my attention to those things that are limiting me, to those worries, to those weaknesses, versus how long am I giving my mental focus and attention to something that's bigger or better or bolder within me. It might sound like a bunch of semantics, and I get that. But, I've been blessed now to help so many people transform their life through our videos and our works, whether it's our best-selling books or all the videos we have online from our promotions and everything else that we do. And I can share with you over and over and over again, what is it that's going to actually change somebody's life? It's not removing their limiting beliefs. And I know that sounds silly, but it's like, if you just put less pressure on the brake in your car, it doesn't mean you're going to speed up. Right? Your foot's still on the brake. If you're always focusing on these things that are limiting you, you're always going to be limited just because your relative weight of importance and duration of your focus and your attention is on these limiting things. And it's time in our culture, just like in our psychology, in our study of psychology, we got to move from mental illness to mental health. We've got to get you to move from your limiting beliefs into something bigger and greater and grand about yourself. We've got to stop you focusing on all the reasons that you're a mouse in life and start focusing on why you're a lion, why you have something within you that's more bold and powerful and profound than you ever even knew. So what we have to do is change what I call your dominant frame of attention and focus. Most people's dominant frame, they're given that relative weight of importance to those things that limit them. And I say, you know what, this next year has to be the year for you that you're limitless. That you're going to go, okay, enough. I mean, how far have you gotten in your life now where you're just constantly beating yourself and berating yourself and worrying about your limits and worrying about all these things of all the reasons that you have to be worried, to be weak, to be less than you are? It's like what Marianne Williamson said so long ago, you're not serving the world by playing small. And you're not serving the world by constantly focusing on your limiting beliefs and trying to remove them. Look, you will always have insecurity. I know that's really motivating, but you're always going to have it. I work with some of the top professionals in every given field, some of the best athletes in the world, some of the best well-known celebrities, and many of the people who are the best performers in any given industry. And I can tell you, they still have their doubts and their fears. They still have times when they wake up and they're just like, I don't know what to do with myself. That doesn't ever go away. And that's great because it's part of the human condition that also makes us humble, makes us real, makes us check ourselves. And I'm not saying that, we all have to go around being happy optimists all the time. But I will share with you, if you didn't know, optimists are much more capable of changing the world than pessimists are. It's not a guess, it's proven by science. And what do we mean by that? Optimism is one of the most studied things in the psychology literature, period. It's one of the most studied traits. Optimists are more likely to face a problem than pessimists. Because pessimists go, I can't change it. I can't do anything about it. It's going to be that way forever. It's a pervasive problem, and I don't have a control of it. An optimist says, I could probably handle that. We can change that too. In other words, pessimists tend to avoid problems that need to be changed, and optimists tend to confront them and move forward and do something about it. That's pretty profound, and that's pretty proven now. So yeah, I'm saying, while not all of us can go around being happy-go-lucky and avoiding all of our limits, I'm also saying, maybe it is time that we focus on those things that we can change. Focus on something that's bigger than ourselves and our own little insecurities and worries. And I think that's the challenge right now with so many people saying, limiting beliefs, limiting beliefs. Look, they're there. You're going to have them. The question is, are they going to win the day? I have insecurities and worries all the time. I'm worried about the stupid haircut I had yesterday. Doesn't really slow me down that much. I have a moment to serve you right now. I'm not going to focus on that.
So thank you, Brendan, for those really great insights. Now, don't let your push to overcome procrastination to be yet another area by which you let perfectionism trap you. It is good to plan ahead. It is good to expect setbacks and be ready for them, to anticipate some days, some weeks, you will utterly fall flat on your face. Now, I've dealt a whole episode with this idea of being stuck and having stuck emotions, stuck feelings, and I would recommend that you go back and listen to that episode if you haven't heard that yet, because you're going to find when you face new projects or new tasks with this new now mindset, you're going to embrace the now moment. You're going to not procrastinate. You're going to push yourself to start. So when you start doing that, you will sometimes find that this stress, this new project, will push you back into old patterns of thinking. You will revert back to old patterns. And I talk about this in the Stuck episode, how in our mind and emotions that we have these roads that our thoughts travel upon. Now, some of these roads are like little dirt roads that you see out on the countryside. They're just one lane, and only one car can pass through that. And so if there's two cars going down that dirt road, one of them has to pull to the side to let the other one pass through. But roads are kind of funny because the more that people travel on them, the more people move around them, then suddenly that one lane dirt road becomes a 2-lane dirt road. And then before long, that 2-lane dirt road becomes a 2-lane paved road. And then all of a sudden there's a 3rd lane to help people turn. And then there's 4 lanes to deal with all the traffic. And then there's 6 lanes, and then there's 8 lanes. And all of that is because of the traffic that is going down this. And it's much, much easier and faster to go down an 8-lane highway than it is to go down a 1-lane dirt road. Now, my friends, this is basically what happens to our thoughts. All this type of stinking thinking, all of this perfectionism, all of this dealing with procrastination, it may have started out for us as a one-lane dirt road, but with a lot of practice and repeatedly doing it over and over in our lives, those memories, those patterns inside of us of how we deal with life, of how we think about life, become paved roads. Then they become 4-lane highways, and then they become 6-lane highways, and then 8-lane highways. So when we're put into situations in which we're dealing with those stress, our 8-lane highway is fully charged to let all sorts of stinking thinking straight through and to derail us in life. So we're not playing with a full deck. It doesn't take very much for us to get off kilter, for it to totally overwhelm us. So if we're put into a situation in which we have an 8-lane highway built to totally accept procrastination in our life, then any little bit of stress in those types of areas means that those procrastination thoughts are going to be traveling down that 8-lane highway at 80 miles per hour, and it's going to be very hard for us to get back onto track. We've got to deal with it very fast and very effectively and not let those thinkings dominate us. And we don't have a lot of time to deal with because those are 8-lane highways for us. And I can tell you that over time, we start demolishing that highway, but it does take some time. And some of you have an 8-lane highway for procrastination in your life. And man, those thoughts fly down there uninhibited, unchecked, unchallenged in our lives. And you're not going to go from an 8-lane highway down to a 1-lane dirt road overnight. And you're not going to get there maybe over a month, maybe even over a year. So you're going to expect some failure in this, and you've got to be resilient, and you've got to have the courage to keep with it, because I'm telling you that it will get better. And you keep after this, and you'll find that 6 months from now, you're not dealing with procrastination nearly as much as you were 6 months prior to that. And then 6 months after that, it's even less so. And then 6 months after that, even less so. But it's like anything in life that's worth anything, like working out, losing weight, saving money for retirement. It's a little bit at a time that adds up over time. So don't think you have to eliminate these feelings or thoughts to start establishing new habits. And some make a mistake right here. Some people think that they have to completely purge bad habits before they can establish new ones. But that's not the case. Rather, you need to learn to use stinking thinking, these negative responses, like it was an alarm clock in your life. So, for example, I know that I have a tendency to want to do other things than embrace the now moment and to start. So I'm going to start being on the lookout for when I do this. I know there's an 8-lane highway there for me. I know I have a quick tendency to quickly just accept those thoughts and let them dominate my life. So now that I'm aware of that, I'm going to be on the lookout for when I do this or when I think this. And when I catch myself doing this, I'm going to stop and I'm going to be thankful for this alarm clock in my life. And then I'm going to choose to focus and to start and to embrace my now habits. And you say, well, Brandon, okay, wait a minute. This is such an 8-lane highway for me. Sometimes it's 2 days after it happens before I even realized I did it. Well, then be thankful you realized it at all. Seriously. I mean, you may have never even realized you did it. So if it takes you 2 days to realize that, then the goal is to start chipping away at that 8-lane highway, and for it to maybe only take a day and a half before you realize it next time, and then maybe only a day before you realize it next time. And before long, it'll be within the same day or within the same hour or within the same few minutes that it actually happens to you. My friends, it will happen. It will happen for you. But again, you've got to see your thoughts and your brain and your activities there as this 8-lane highway that you have built over very steadily over time and paved that thing. And it's going to take some time to demolish. So in the book, Neil describes quite a bit of detail about how to build up resistance and resilience to these types of things. And I'm not going to cover all of this because, again, I think it would be very unique for many of us, and I would encourage you just to read through the book. But let me tell you a couple of things that Neil talks about. The primary thing that he talks about that I found interesting is to do a planned setback, and literally to plan failure, which again sounds very strange. You know, we don't want to fail, we don't want to procrastinate, but what Neil suggests is that you intentionally plan a setback, to intentionally plan a failure and walk yourself through it, to train yourself through it, to play a game with it. You know, why as adults did we ever lose our ability to play and imagine? Why did that happen to a lot of us? Where did we lose that? Why did we think that losing our ability to imagine and to play meant that we became an adult. To me, the older I get, the more I've realized that to abandon play, to abandon imagination is not to grow up, it's to die. That's basically what has happened to many of us. We embrace not adulthood, we embrace death, because being alive is being creative. Being alive means that you play. Being alive means that your imagination is running wild. And when you were a child, you were fully alive because you fully embraced that type of thing. And adults, for some reason, many adults don't do that. And I want to encourage you. Yes, I know that seems kind of goofy. I know it seems kind of weird. But yes, you should, in your life, play. You should imagine. You should play a game and go through. And in this case, this isn't just a positive thing. You should imagine and play positive things of you being resistant to manipulation, that you are going after your creativity, that you are doing productive stuff. You need to be imagining that type of stuff. But you should also, if you're dealing with problems like procrastination, use your imagination to embrace the failure of that and to study what's happening in your emotions and in your thoughts when you are actually dealing with this procrastination, but do it in a safe environment. So don't wait till you're right in the middle of the battle, when you're right in the middle of a very important project at work. No, do this when people aren't counting on something big from you that you could fail at, and it's not the end of the world. Pick something else and study how you procrastinate and what you feel, and really do it right. I mean, pick something and intentionally procrastinate on it. So by doing this, we're not saying that you pretend to procrastinate. We're saying that you really do procrastinate. Pick something in your life. You're going to do this, or you're going to do this project, or you're going to do this task, and then say, you know what? I'm going to procrastinate on this intentionally. I'm going to go through all of the emotions and thoughts like I would procrastinate on anything else. And notice what your feelings are. Notice what your thoughts are. Notice any kind of condemning messages in your thoughts, and then analyze this. And then do a replay of this whole scenario in your mind, in your imagination, and then insert the techniques that you've learned here in this particular podcast. Imagine yourself making the choice. Not that I don't have to do anything, but I choose to do something, and envision what that would look like in that particular situation that you just procrastinated in. Or imagine yourself using the unschedule, or imagine yourself focusing and going after it. And you do stuff like this, it's going to produce what Neil calls resilience. And let me read something that Neil says in his book about this. People who consider themselves failures have failed once and stay there. A failure wants a guarantee before starting a project that everything will go perfectly without any problems. A successful person is willing to take reasonable risk, knowing that there are no guarantees except Murphy's Law, that if something can go wrong, it will. Successful people fail many times and bounce back, refusing to let any one failure define their worth. In spite of the difficulties and failure they face in life, successful people learn to be resilient and carry on. They've developed a series of nets under their high wire act that lets them know that a mistake will not be the end of the world, because I won't let it be. I will pick myself up and I will try again, regardless of how embarrassed or hurt I feel. And I thought his quote was very interesting about this failure mindset, that any of us who have this failure mindset don't want to start a project unless we have some guarantee that we will be perfect in it, that there will be no problems in it. And folks, the fact is, you will have setbacks in life. Now, if you really let this sink in, I've just given you the most greatest news there is. I'm telling you that there will be these setbacks. So don't be surprised by them. Don't be upset by them. Don't be under the delusion that you can prevent them from happening. Just accept that they are going to happen and throw a party over this. Be incredibly happy. Get out on the street and dance around for a little bit, because this is a freeing statement, even though it may sound like a very pessimistic statement about expecting setbacks, but it's actually a very freeing statement if you just live it out. Expect setbacks, and don't use setbacks as an excuse to give up or to procrastinate. If you expect it will happen, you won't be surprised or disappointed if it does happen. Quit worrying about the origin of any kind of problem that you face as well. You aren't responsible for the cause of what happens to you. You are really responsible for how you respond to it. You're not responsible for why things happen. You are responsible for how you choose to respond to things in life. So don't devote your energy to analyzing the cause and worrying about it so much as devoting your energy to the solution to that problem. There is a great speech by a motivational speaker named Willie Jolly that I want to play for you right now, and I will post up the link to the entire speech in the show notes in case you want to go listen to it.
But I put it in 5 simple steps so that you could get them and walk away with them. How many want those 5 simple steps? Here they go. Step number 1, wake up and dream. Everybody say, wake up and dream. Now, this sounds like an oxymoron. How do you wake up and dream? When I was finishing my book, I sent the book to the publisher, and it was ready to be printed. And the day it was going to be printed, I got an email from a friend. It was a quote by T.E. Lawrence that said, all men dream, but not equally. Those that dream at night in the dusty recesses of their minds awaken to find that it was just vanity. But those that dream by day are the dangerous ones, for they dream with their eyes open, and they make their dreams come true. What are your dreams? What are the goals? Scripture says, without a vision, a people perish, but with a vision, a people will flourish. What's your vision? What do you see for your future? Number 2, you got to show up. Everybody say show up. Woody Allen said 80% of success is simply showing up. And I believe he was right. I believe you got to show up. You got to show up with your stuff. Show up engaged. Show up excited. Show up and do more than you're expected to do. Go further than you're expected to go. Give more than you're expected to give. I've learned something in these 20 years of speaking. I've learned that if you do more than you're paid to do, one day you'll be paid more for what you do. Am I right about it? You got to do more. See, I learned that you got to show up. See, if you just show up, you get the opportunities in life 80% of the time. Now, if you show up on time, you get the opportunities 85% of the time. Show up on time with a plan, you get the opportunities 90% of the time. Show up on time with a plan and implement that plan, you get the opportunities 95% of the time. Show up on time with a plan and implement and execute that plan with excellence. You get the opportunities 100% of the time. You just got to keep showing up. My son just graduated from Howard University Law School. He's doing very well now. But he used to go to William & Mary, and he struggled. His first year, they almost put him out. Third year, he came home honor roll. I was so excited. I gave him a big hug and a kiss. I said, son, what was the secret to your success? He said, Dad, I listened to your tapes and showed up to all my classes. Everybody repeat after me. If you want to go up, then you got to show up. Number 3, you got to stand up. You got to stand up and become a leader of one. Before you can lead many, you must be able to lead oneself. I love this little quote. He who knows not, and knows not that he knows not, but thinks that he knows, is a fool. Leave him alone. Now, he who knows not and knows that he knows not is a child. Teach him. But he who knows, but knows not that he knows, is asleep. Wake him. Oh, but he who knows and knows what he knows and uses what he knows is a leader. Follow him. You got to make a commitment to be a leader. What does that take? You got to make a commitment to keep stepping up to the plate and swinging for the fences. Every day, whenever you do what you do, I don't care what it is you do. Wherever you are, looking and listening across the web or here in the audience, whatever you do, I'm encouraging you every day to swing for the fences. Understanding when you swing for the fences, sometimes you'll miss. But it's okay. Did you know Hank Aaron had twice as many strikeouts as he had home runs? But he kept swinging for the fences. Most times he missed, but when he hit it, he knocked it out the park. When it's your shot to do what you do, swing for the fences. And number 5, understand that your life is going to have some setbacks. You're going to have some setback moments, but keep swinging and keep striving because change is going to happen in your life. Stuff is going to happen. Setbacks are going to happen. But a setback is nothing but a setup for a comeback.
Now, I found that incredibly motivating, and I hope that you did as well. This resilience, this inner drive that we do not give up. And the last thing for today from Neil in his book, he mentions that a Olympic contender, Olympic runner once told him this, that if he thought too much about reaching the finish line, he started losing speed. Whether he was ahead or behind, he had to train himself to turn his attention away from finishing and just toward the next step. just staying in the race. Now, I can relate to this, although I'm not an Olympic runner, but I've ran in a few 5Ks, and there are some times when I ran those. It was just in the last bit, and I'm starting thinking all this negative thoughts. Can I finish? Oh, look how far it is. I don't know. And I started to say, wait a minute, quit thinking about that. Just take the next step. Just run the next block. Just run the next thing. Just do that. And then when you do that, okay, let's do the next thing. And you quit doing all this thinking, and then you end up finishing. So don't let setbacks or failures derail you. Expect them, prepare for them, play a game, and imagine going through them and dealing with them, and intentionally fail at them in your game. So don't always in your game be the one that's winning in those particular battles. Sometimes in your imagination, intentionally lose, and then analyze how you felt and look at how you could overcome that. So when you really do face a setback in life, you've already experienced what it feels like, and you already have experienced what it's like to overcome that. And above all, keep pressing forward. Again, if it helps you to remember that many of these habits that we have formed are like 8-lane highways, you're not going to go back to that dirt road overnight. And I can tell you that I really started working hard on this area of procrastination. Gosh, when was that? That was back in 2003, and now it's 2014. So I have spent the last 11 years working on this in my life, and I'm still learning, and I'm still demolishing my 8-lane highway. I think now maybe I'm at a 4-lane highway. If I'm optimistic, maybe a 2-lane highway, but it's still paved, folks. It is still a paved highway for me, and I'm chipping away at that and working to get back to a dirt road, but it's taken me 11 years just to go from an 8-lane highway down to a 2 or 4-lane highway. It's going to take some time. Don't give up, and do not accept failure at any cost. I don't care how often you fail. I don't care if you took 1 step forward and 10 steps back. I want you to keep pushing forward in these techniques and keep working them into your life. And guess what? There's many times when I would apply these techniques and then quit using them for 6 months or longer, and then come back and say, I'm just miserable right now, and I'm not getting anything done, and I'm not pursuing my passion. And oh yeah, there's all these techniques I learned from the now habit. I'm not even using them at all. I haven't used them for the last 6 months. Okay, quit beating up on myself. Let's start doing it this week, right now. Let's do the unschedule. Let's do this reverse calendar right now. But I haven't done this for 6 months, and you should have been, okay, I don't care. I'm not going to listen to these negative voices about how I should have done this and how I ought to have done this. Okay, just shut up, Brandon. What are we going to do now? Well, now we're going to start doing this schedule. Oh, but gosh, all this time, I don't care. Oh, I don't care what time was wasted. I've realized it now. I'm embracing my now moment. So you've got to talk to yourself. I've always told you this from the very beginning in these episodes. You've got to talk to yourself. You've got to deal with these negative thoughts. And many times you have to have these battles and get at it, keep after it. Do not let failure derail you no matter what. Well, that wraps up this episode on fine-tuning your progress, not letting setbacks and failures derail you from these tremendous truths that we have been learning over the last 8 to 9 weeks. As always, I would love for you to leave me some ratings and comments, and you can leave me comments on many of the places that you listen to me on, such as Stitcher. There's ways that you can leave me comments on there. I don't think I have any comments yet on Stitcher, and if you listen to me there, I would love to get some comments and to see you rate the show there. I'm not sure if you can leave me comments on Double Twist. I've just added my show to there, and also with Zune, BlackBerry, all these other places that some of you may be listening to me. If you're listening to me on my website, well, you can't leave me ratings there. But if you are listening to me on iTunes, then you can leave me comments there as well. As I mentioned to you in my last episode, many of my wonderful, amazing overseas listeners, or anyone outside of the United States, such as in Canada, or the UK, or Germany, or Australia, or Japan, or Brazil, all of these wonderful places in Europe and around those areas, I would love for you to leave me some ratings on iTunes. Many of those places, I don't even have 1 rating. I have about 40-something ratings in the United States, which I'm very thankful for, but hardly any ratings from anywhere outside the United States. And would love for some of my non-US listeners to leave me some feedback. I would greatly appreciate that. It just, again, helps people trust the show and to relate to the show, especially in the comments of that. And speaking of comments, as always, I do have a discussion area set up. I've had a lot of great comments left for me lately, And you can leave me some comments on this episode at firstThingsProductivity.com/26. You can also leave me some comments on Twitter, on Facebook. I have a voicemail feature that nobody's left me any questions or comments on that voicemail in quite some time, but you can leave me some there as well. So until next time, remember this: great works are performed not by strength, but by perseverance. So embrace today with passion and intention, and don't die with your music still inside you.